Welcome everyone to the Swedish pavilion where we are sending live from COP28 here in Dubai. Welcome to everyone who are joining us online and welcome to everyone who are participating here in the Swedish pavilion. Today is the Energy Day, and as you know, world leaders from all over the world, experts, scientists, innovators, academia, civil society, and several NGOs from all over the world have gathered here at COP28 in Dubai to collectively try to ensure that we are reaching the targets that has collectively been set globally to reach the Paris Agreement targets. We are today halfway to 2030. We have 6 years, we have 6 harvests left to make sure that we are reducing our emissions and actually halving our emissions by 2030. Currently, however, science is showing that we are actually potentially increasing emissions by 40% instead of halving them. So in order for us to keep 1.5 limit alive, we need to triple the renewable capacity by 2030. It's no doubt that it is urgent to find new ways forward, find new innovations, new collaborative efforts in order for us to scale this transformation. And it is really in the time of crisis and in urgency that we need to present new solutions that exist already today and showcase how they can be implemented and what's needed to scale them. And this is exactly the purpose of what we're doing here and the biggest contribution we can do here at COP28, to showcase those innovations. So here at the Swedish Pavilion, we will host more than 60 events throughout these 2 weeks, and we have gathered front-running stakeholders from academia, civil society, public and private sectors at the very forefront of the green transition. And we are incredibly happy to today talk about such an important topic regarding the energy transition. And while we see that the energy from wind and solar are rapidly growing, we also see the need for complementary and also affordable renewable energy sources. And this is something that we will touch upon today. We will look at new innovative solutions, pilot projects, and also how the Nordics are really at the forefront in trying to increase and unlock the potential of renewable sources. We're going to learn about something called energy from tidal streams and ocean currents. And I, who have the honor to moderate this session, my name is Emma Moder Viking, and I'm head of sustainability at Business Sweden, who are hosting this Swedish pavilion. I do have the absolute honor to be gathered here today together with several fantastic panelists. And I'm very delighted to welcome our first speaker, the Minister of Environment from the Faroe Islands, Ingelin Ström. Please welcome up. I would also like to welcome the CEO of Minesto, Dr. Martin Edlund. Please welcome. And Tord Hustveit, who is a senior political advisor at Statskraft. Welcome up. And last but definitely not least, we have Isabella Gustafsson, who's a research program manager at the Swedish Energy Agency. Welcome, everyone. So, as mentioned, we definitely need to wrap up and speed up the green transition, and not least within the energy transition, and find new ways forward for renewable energy. And Martin, I would like actually to start with you. If you could just tell us a little bit about this innovation that your company has developed. Give us a little pitch on what does it mean? How does it work?
Yes, I will do that. This is the Energy Day, isn't it?
It is.
At COP. Then it's really appropriate to talk about a new renewable energy generation technology that we have developed. We are converting the kinetic energy from ocean currents and tidal currents into electricity with a unique principle. I'll not go into the principle in detail here because we'll talk about scale up and the context around it more. But what we do is that we fly kites underwater. And the unique principle is directly linked to being able to utilize a pretty much untapped global resource that will give us more than what nuclear on Earth is giving today. And for many areas of the world, it can even be a dominating energy source. And if you think about, we talk about impact technologies a lot here. I think that we really need to think hard about what we mean by impact technologies. But when we look at the few candidates available next to solar and wind. There aren't that many on Earth. And we know with intermittency and the challenges we face with solar and wind, it does not exist all over the world. There are areas where it's dark in winter and the wind is not blowing in summer and so forth. So we need complementary generation solutions to fix this challenge, the net zero challenge. The tidal resource, the ocean current resource, is global. We can find it on all oceans, and basically all continents can utilize this. But in order to start, I mean, we're generating electricity in one place on Earth with this system, fully functional, feeding it into the grid, and that place is a very beautiful group of islands in the middle of the Atlantic called the Faroe Islands. And someone explained to me that it might be so that it's the Faroe Islands that originates from it, but there are more theories on that. But this place will be sort of the case for us today. And you see some visuals from the Faroe Islands on the screen behind you here with a roadmap of a 200 megawatt rollout of electricity production in the Faroe Islands. And when you develop innovation, when you really want quick impact, when you want to scale up, you need to find a really, really good and strong first deployment area for this. And I think, as you will see when we move on here, that this is a very good match for our technology. Modern society with a natural resource that's perfect, with a stable built-out grid and a very strong local partner in the utility that manage the network and production capacity. Also really good collaboration with authorities, both in the Faroes and from a Nordic and Swedish perspective. The key here is that we will add base load capacity to the grid. So the goal, the political goal of being net zero by 2030 can be reached, 2030 in the Faroe Islands, can be reached quicker and at a lower cost if we realize our build-out roadmap for the islands. And that base load aspect is so important to create affordable net zero networks. We will do a lot of storage, we will find ways around that. But in this case, if we look at the cost for the society of transforming into net zero here, the cost of storage, if we're just utilizing wind and the small hydro resource, the cost of storage investment is equivalent to the total build out of tidal generation capacity. And that tells you how we can reach more affordable solutions by combining renewables. So I believe that the Faroe Islands case is a model case, both when it comes to policy ambitions and the thinking around the high-level system costs. And the good thing for us and for our technology is that there are thousands of Faroe Islands around there, the world. So let's see if we can keep some focus on this rollout and discuss the challenges and opportunities.
I would love to do that, but first of all, I would just say it's such an impressive and pioneering innovation that you have developed there. And typically we talk a lot about the importance of affordable energy and of course also renewable energy. But Martin, you also mentioned the fact that it's actually predictable. Could you just elaborate a little bit on that? Why is that important? And also how can your kites actually ensure that it is predictable? Why is it important?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to compensate with heavy investments in storage. And I mean, the Faroe Islands is a closed energy system. You can't rely on someone else providing electricity. So you need to have this system stable. And in order to keep the diesel generators shut off, in this case, there is a small hydro resource and there is a phase shift between tides in the north and the south. So when we build 200 megawatts of capacity, we can guarantee a 40 megawatt base load injection to the grid because it's such a good grid that is built out and because the phase shift with the resource. And that means a lot. The value of that electricity is much higher than if you have sort of stochastic generation built into it.
Yeah. Turning over to you, Minister, you are not only having one of the most ambitious climate targets in the world to be net zero by 2030, and applaud to that, I think, like, it's fantastic, very impressive. But you've also been very bold, I'd say, to take on this innovation and to pilot this new technology in the Faroe Islands. Could you just tell us a little bit about this pilot and tell us how come that you were such bold government to take on this new technology in order to reach your targets?
Yeah, well, the target that we set was to have 100% renewable energy in 2030. And it's also a goal that the national electrical company, SEV, set. So it's a collaboration between, of course, SEV, and also now the government also wants that to happen. When it comes to emission, there are some other goals also for 2030 that we are working on, also to scale up to the Paris Agreement. But as Martin said, in the Faroes we have, if there's anything that we have a lot of, it's weather. Being an island, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, there's a lot of wind, there's a lot of rain, but it's not something that you can be 100% dependent upon. When you have an isolated electricity grid, you need to be able to have something to back that up if we are to reach our goal to be 100% renewable energy. So I think that for us, the tidal energy is a really, really good source. If that could be a part of our energy mix, being an isolated grid, that could be very, very valuable to us.
And do you have any examples on how would, the importance of then unlocking renewable energy, like how important would this kind of innovation and this kind of renewable energy be for you to reach the target? Would it be possible to elaborate on that energy source?
Yeah, so what the tidal energy, the stable tidal streams that we have around the Faroes. I don't know if you saw in the video. There are a lot of areas where you can have these tidal kites, and with the project now in Vestmannaeyjar and also the upcoming one in Hestfire, it is it would mean if successful, it will mean phasing out oil for us, which is extremely important in our work to really make this 100% renewable energy goal, to make it come true, and to make that happen. So for us, it would be also, as Martin said, of course, we'll have to look into other storage systems as well to stabilize the energy systems, because when you have a lot of wind coming in, and you guys probably all know this, you need to stabilize. So yeah, it would be very meaningful for us to have that, but also because mainly it would mean phasing out the oil in the Faroes, which is that's a very important,
big part. Yeah. Thank you, Martin. Would you like to comment on that?
Yes, I've learned by talking to some of the leading aquaculture fish farming companies in the world that are based in the Faroe Islands. Bakkafrost is one of them. Also, that the whole agenda for society to go 100% renewable, I think it's a very good illustration of how important a sustainable value chain is for your product. It's probably the cleanest salmon you can get from those fantastic areas around the islands in the middle. But of course, if we're using diesel in the rather energy-intense production of the salmon, then we burden that offer to customers. So by going 100% renewable, there's a good synergy in offering more customer value in the most important industry in the Faroes as well.
Yeah, of course. And when it comes to being 100% renewable on land, we also have our entire fishery sector and shipping that we will have big problems with, as anyone else. But when it comes to the salmon farming, they're also really big. They're making some big pushes to upscale the renewable energy on land on the Faroes, and everybody wants it. So it's very important that we deliver on that. Also because we facing the changes in the climate that more heating would cause would be for the businesses in the Faroes, it would be very, very bad for the entire production.
So I'm curious to hear more about how you've been able to enable this project. But first, I would like to turn over to you, Tord, working at Statkraft, who's one of Europe's largest producer of hydro and renewable energy. And you're focusing a lot on then hydropower, but also wind and solar. And then considering then the importance of scaling and also then really triple the renewable capacity to 2030 to keep the 1.5 degree target limit alive. Do you see that there's any need for additional technologies within renewable energy, and any complement to the existing deployment and plans that you're working with today?
Yeah, let me just start by saying we're not one of the largest. We are the largest producer of renewable energy in Europe, so that's important to point out, both based on our existing hydropower fleet, both in Norway, but we also run 54 hydropower plants in Sweden, but also now growing with wind and solar globally. And I think just to step one point back, I think it's hard to comprehend how fast the energy transition is going right now. When we prepared for this COP, I wrote some speaking points using the Bloomberg New Energy Finance report on solar. And it says that in the Q3 version said this year is going to be built 392 gigawatt of solar globally. And then we came down there and we thought that number, that's a bit large, can't be right. So we Googled and someone found, wait, this one says 413. And I was, what have I done wrong? But I hadn't done wrong. It was the Q4 version that had come, and they had to revise up their targets. So things are happening incredibly fast. And I think in general, we have a tendency to focus too much on what's not working and too little on what's actually going the right way. And if you also look at the International Energy Agency's modeling, if you look at the World Energy Outlook in 2015 and compared it to the net zero scenario, I think it was something like 67% away from reaching the net zero scenario. If you do the same today, it's 20% away. So there have been an incredible amount of progress over the last decade. That said, there are of course challenges. And this doesn't happen by itself, and innovation is of course an important part of going the next mile forward. You can push a lot of solar into the energy system. You can put a lot of wind into the energy system. But in general, we have done a lot of modeling, especially in our home market in the Nordic, but also globally. And we see that if you use a plethora of different technologies, it's typically easier to get to net zero than if you only use one or two technologies. In a sense, it's obvious, but it also needs to be said. And I think that's because you can. And here I think the role of a well-functioning electricity market is extremely important. That you see that, okay, solar, cheapest way to generate electricity, maybe not in the Nordics, but in the rest of the world. But you see that if you have an enormous amount of solar, you need to balance that out with something else at some point. Right. And there, of course, tidal energy can play an important role.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the importance of really highlighting the positive transition and the progress that we're seeing. And I also read that between the COP in Copenhagen in 2009 and then the Paris Agreement year for 2015, that the price on solar actually fell with 70% just over those 2 years, through a few years. But considering the need, when we actually have developed an innovation that is useful and very much needed and demanded, there's of course several tools that we need. It's finance, it's policies, and it's of course collaboration, and also other frameworks. And you at Statkraft, are there any policies that you see are needed, and are there any policies that you are pushing for in order to then continue scaling and not only being the largest renewable provider in Europe, but maybe globally?
I think in general, if you look at electricity markets, there are a few things many things that's needed, but in general, this is long-term investments. So one important thing is predictability.
Yeah.
We also see that there is an issue with access to grid right now in many places of the world. I mean, the goal at this COP is to increase, or we agreed to triple renewable capacity to 11,000 gigawatt by 2030.
Right.
If you look at the grid queue in the US and in Europe, there are 1,000 gigawatts of solar in the grid queue. So I mean, 10% of that target can be reached just by fixing grid. And there are also, I think, like 500 gigawatts of wind in the same queue. So fixing grid, and then you also have permitting, both for grid, of course, but also for new sources of renewable energy. And I think there is one thing that we always have to mention, and that's carbon pricing. And especially I think that's important for technologies like Tidal Wave, because who is your most important competitor? That's probably a gas peaking plant somewhere, at least outside of the Faroe Islands and other places. So if you sort of get to increase the price of carbon, then you probably push out fossil fuel as a peaking and balancing capacity.
Martin, would you like to add on to that? Do you agree?
Just to say that we're also developing projects and looking into North Norway as a small company. You can say, are you insane, or trying to deliver energy technologies to Norway? But I think that for us, one reason is, of course, that there is some differences to Norway as a whole compared to Norway in the north, with weaker grids and a growing need to decarbonize LNG facilities and other things up there. But for us, it's also a matter of offering partnerships and working with the existing offshore energy sector. And I believe that if you look at Norway and the competence you have in subsea engineering, in marine operations, in exploring resources at sea, that match for us could be a really, really strong match. And thus building sort of a joint export offer to the world.
And besides like public-private partnerships and the trading systems, and as well as policies, of course, we're also talking a lot about finance. And we also have the Swedish Energy Agency and Isabella here. And the Swedish Energy Agency are working all over the world to scale new green and sustainable energy sources. And everything from, I mean, you are a lot of experts at the Energy Agency, and also conducting several feasibility studies and similar. And you've also played a crucial part in this partnership in enabling this project at the Faroe Islands together with Minesto. Could you just tell us a little bit about that work, and also for the Faroe Islands, but also how the Swedish Energy Agency are working globally to take leadership for the green transition and energy transition?
Yes, thank you for the question. I believe that this partnership and this project and innovation is actually a beautiful example of how research funding and financing can play a role in creating the future's technology. We have funded, I think, 6 projects together with you. So all of these projects have accumulated with new knowledge and taking the innovations one step further every time until you are where you are today, where you can actually launch this and say that it works in reality. And I think that's a beautiful example of research funding, really, and something that we take with us with pride. And on the broader question, on the Swedish Energy Agency, we fund a lot of research in a variety of fields. We do a lot of work with international corporations and other funding agencies. And I think that looking at how research funding plays a role in the system as a whole, from early development to scale up and actual implementation is something that is so important to take with us here, and to be able to take all the knowledge that we have gathered the last couple of years, or the last couple of decades even, and be able to now implement this, scale it up, and demonstrate it on a large scale. I think that's very important. And at the same time, of course, considering the people who live in the societies that have to implement this technology, and considering their needs as well.
Thank you, Isabella. And also, Martin, I see you grab the microphone again, ready to jump in. And I'm also curious to hear, like, how do you see that, such as, I mean, stakeholders such as the Swedish Energy Agency and other participants on stage also can support in scaling and commercializing these kind of innovations to ensure that they are being implemented and scaled globally?
I think it's one thing that should be noted here is that Sweden, we do not have any tidal resource. So it's not the Swedish natural resource.
Right.
So the Swedish Energy Agency is sponsoring projects to sort of support the transition elsewhere. Of course, there is an export opportunity to it, but right. I think that's a very strong acknowledgement that this is a global problem in a sense.
Right.
I also believe, even if, I mean, Swedish Energy Agency can't sort of sponsor Minesto's complete growth. It's raw, large infrastructure projects needed moving forward. But by having that sort of backbone support on the R&D side is also sort of, it's a good, you know, sign of quality, and we can sort of rely on that when we have that support, it builds our own brand. So therefore it's also important in the scale-up phase.
Indeed, and considering that, back to you, Minister, could you, I mean, you were mentioning earlier the permitting processes. How are you at the government working with that, and how important has that been in order to enable these innovations?
Yeah, of course, now we're talking about with what we're doing with Minesto currently. Yeah. It's on a test scale, so the licensing for the testing is of course approved. But if you are to work towards scaling up, it would be probably another form of licensing. But I think that we have a fast working process. I think, yeah, you're nodding, yeah. And I think that the collaboration has been good. But of course, if you're looking to scale up in a very on a big scale as this is, that we're seeing the plans for Minesto on a Faroese level. You know, you bear in mind that the Faroe Islands is a country of 55,000 inhabitants. So you know, but the cooperation between licensing when it comes to also the municipalities, I think has been good. And if there are any issues, those have been solved. But of course, there's also the need to do the environmental impact assessments. Right. And those need to be approved. I think that those have been approved probably during over some months. Yeah. So it would be more of that. But when you look at the Faroe Islands as such a small place, going renewable like we are, and also, you know, having wind and solar energy and also hydropower, you need something that is stable to sort of to work with that. And when it comes to the tidal stream in the Faroe Islands, you know exactly how that works. You know almost by the minute when the streams change and how the tide flows. So I think also one, if I can add one thing that I see is very different from other installations, is that there has been almost or not that I know of any NIMBY effects on the Faroes when it comes to the tidal kites. I don't know if it's because it's a new technology and it's very exciting, but we've only seen excitement. The Vestmannaeyjar is my hometown, and I've only heard people being happy. Also, I think there's been a good collaboration between local people that you told me you hired some people right now, and also using companies from Vestmanna to help with diving and drilling. So that's very positive. Yeah.
Indeed, and I mean, it's truly an inspiring project and an innovation, and really like a lighthouse project this. And Martin, we're talking a lot about the opportunities here and the possibilities, which is incredibly important, but we are also, of course, facing a few hinders and challenges in order to actually reach the speed that we need. Could you tell us how you're working to harness, of course, the innovation, but also what critical hinders that you see are in the way for your scale globally? Because clearly there is a demand, not least in areas where it could be very difficult to maybe have solar or energy or any kind of renewable sources. So what challenges you see?
I mean, there are challenges in many areas, of course, related to this.
For sure.
But I mean, one is related to how do you integrate this natural resource into sort of society in the legal context? And if we take the Faroe Islands, I mean, we would need to use maybe 7 different sites in different straits around here. And in order to make an investment case plausible, to bring inbound investments and create it, it might be so that you need to view this as one site.
Right.
And who should own it? I mean, in Sweden, in the 50s, we built the big rivers in the north, and it's owned by Vattenfall, and it's sort of a national resource in that sense. And I believe that kind of setup in many parts of the world will be good here also, that you sort of control that locally, and therefore the collaboration with the local utility, SEV, is very important. But then how do you rent or lease seabed? How do you legislate that? But then it's good to be in an area where there is a long tradition of aquaculture, where you have different rights to different areas. So that will help.
And considering the importance of collaboration, which we've been talking about a lot here, between different interconnecting stakeholders, I would like to turn to you, Tord. I mean, the Nordics have already a high, share of renewable energy in their energy mix, but we do also see, of course, an increasing demand. But how do you see that the Nordics can then work together, to even closer together, to ensure the supply of more renewables in not only the Nordics but globally?
I think the Nordics has been a global leader when it comes to cooperation on the energy sector, especially on electricity. If you go back to the 1960s, that was the first interconnection was built between Norway and Sweden. And that was, at that point, Norway was a bit poorer than we are today. So to finance a hydropower plant outside of Trondheim, we built a connection to Stockholm. And then the Swedes paid for it. And gained some electricity as well, of course. So that's a good trade, I guess. And I see going forward, I think that, let me start another place. I mean, the demand is going to increase massively in the Nordics. We recently did an in-depth study of Norway, where we see that even if Norway doesn't reach its climate targets, doesn't have any industrial growth, but do some more climate policy than today, electricity demand is going to increase by 30%. If we do a lot of climate policy and a lot of industry, it's going to increase by 90%. And I looked at Sweden earlier, and I saw that if you sum up all the investment plans from Swedish industry, I think it's 70 terawatt hours needed to meet that. And to reach net zero in Sweden, I think you have to double your electricity demand. No, I mean, yeah. So that's a massive increase. But I think what's important in the Nordic is that we keep that cooperation going, because normally when we talk about things, the larger the system, it's often harder to do. But I think when it's come to decarbonizing, it's almost harder with a small system.
Right.
Because you can't use flexibility in different parts of the grid. You can't sort of play on the different time zones or different areas or different weather patterns. And I think that the Nordics has been good at doing this, both because we have had a weather-dependent system for a long time due to hydropower, but also because we have high trust in each other and are able to have this close interconnection. So I think it's important that we keep cooperating on electricity markets and on trading electricity across borders.
Isabella, do you agree? How do you see that we can work even closer together, and how can maybe others learn from the collaboration and the trust that we have developed within the Nordics?
Yeah, I completely agree. And we have, within the research funding, for example, we have a strong collaboration within the CETP partnership, Clean Energy Technology Partnership in the EU, where we finance a lot of different research projects, and especially within ocean energy right now, as we've seen a very large growth in those applications. So that's really interesting to be able to collaborate with other European countries and within the Nordic countries as well. I just wanted to touch upon another of your questions as well. You talked a little bit about the hinders that are to be able to implement this technology, and I wanted to ask you, Martin, a little bit about that. From our perspective, we see that the competence and skills required to be able to implement these technologies are a very large factor and something that we need to take into consideration. Not only the engineers or technicians that need to implement the systems, but also, like you said, the people who can analyze the environmental consequences of these systems. All of these skill sets are needed and very important to be able to make the transition right now. So I wanted to just ask you how you see on that question if you're having trouble finding these competences.
I think it's slowed down ocean energy if you're looking a few decades back. But where we are now, I mean, if you just look at the Faroe Islands, I mean, we're collaborating with the university in Tórshavn on mammal observations and to study environmental impacts. The relatively small utility company in the Faroe, I mean, they are doing advanced economic modeling of the total energy system investment costs, capex in different scenarios, hiring PhDs from Aalborg University employed full-time to work with those things. So I think there are disadvantages with a small system, but the advantages is also that you can quickly reach sort of the end game of net zero, and you can use this sort of as a model and show the dynamics. But the competence area is a challenge, and it's environmental aspects. I mean, it's one thing, but it's as you get closer and closer to larger infrastructure projects, you realize that you need more competence than you can sort of muster yourself as a small company. I've said it earlier here, and I say it again, if we really want to accelerate the net zero drive globally, this sector, I mean, we're done with innovation. The technology works, it's there. It's one of the most high-performing technologies you can find in converting a natural resource into electricity. So we want to invite big players, offshore sector, the Norwegian sort of area, for example, and also large project developers from maybe the Danish and that perspective. So that's our number one challenge, to have some big friends with us as we move into the global rollout.
And we are indeed among global and big friends here at COP28. And before wrapping up, I would just like to ask all of you, start with Isabella, what are your key messages, but also expected outcomes from COP28?
Well, I think that on the theme that we're here today, I think collaboration is something that is so important, and I really hope that we can expand on that on a global level to be able to reach our targets.
Thank you, Isabella. Tord.
I hope that in a world with growing tension, that we can come together and agree that the climate crisis has to be solved with cooperation. So that's my biggest hope for this COP.
Injili?
Yeah, of course, I completely agree. Cooperation is extremely important, but I also think that when we look at where we are now or where we should be, action is probably the keyword that I would find most suitable for that. Yeah.
Yeah, for Minesto, it's obvious. I mean, it's to tell the world that there are a solution that can help fixing the global problem. Challenge, yeah.
Fantastic. So hearing from a private company, an innovator, and government representatives, and a private sector, and also an expert agency such as the Energy Agency, I think it's incredibly inspiring to hear the alignment and also the necessity for us to work together, public-private partnerships. And collaboration definitely has been key, action as mentioned. And as also I've been mentioning, the fact that existing solutions exist. We just need to work better together to innovate, not only innovate innovations exist, but innovate new policies and incentives for us to scale. So I would say thank you so much and good luck with the fantastic initiatives that are being conducting out there in the Faroe Islands, and thank you for everyone participating. Thank you so much, Minister of Environment of the Faroe Islands, Ingeling Ström. Thank you so much, and also Tord from Stadskraft, Isabella from the Swedish Energy Agency, and Martin Edlund from Minesto. So thank you so much for everyone who participated today. Please join the Swedish Pavilion, tune into our sessions online, or visit us here in the Swedish Pavilion. Together, we are here to ensure that we are scaling the innovations, finding new ways forward within policy and finance to pioneer the possible. Thank you very much.